start the presentation. So Danny, we'll also have some ways of new closing. Can everybody see the slides? So I'm going to start my slideshow right here. Hopefully everybody can see that okay. Let's see if we've got questions coming through. All right, you're still getting a feel for the webinars, definitely taking notes. Good, Sherry. All right, Shayla, you want to get higher close rates at our lectures. We get loads of leads, but not always is significant close rates. All right, so this is what this whole thing's about. So first thing is you got to set the stage. So before you ever go to deliver a lecture, I don't know if this is on. You want to make sure that you're prepared. So your mindset's got to be right. Can they see that? Sorry, I'm making sure I got this thing. I don't know that you guys can see that. Can you guys see my screen? Can you? All right, I don't. Okay, so we're going to do autoimmunity, gut bugs, and belly fat. So when you go first out, you're going to step on stage, and you don't want to be messing around and doing like a ho humming. You really want to get down to the point when it comes to your topic. So usually I ask a question. How many of you in here have an autoimmune condition? Raise your hand. How many of you in here would like to lose some belly fat? Raise your hand. How many of you have gut bugs or are familiar that gut bugs could be an issue? Oh, there we go. With your body's ability to lose weight. And a lot of people will have no idea about this. There, I think we finally got it on. Sorry about that. Okay, so this lecture, it should be in your Kajabi PowerPoint block. But let's jump into this. Okay, so as you're starting a functional medicine clinic or any time you're doing any marketing, first thing, add value. So you have all their name tags written up, and I actually prefer that you print these name tags up. And when you're talking to the guests on the phone, let's say that you're scheduling them for autoimmunity, gut bugs, and belly fat. As the presenter, what I like to do is I like to see what conditions are coming in for. Not only does that keep my team on track as far as what the script, making sure they're following the script, but it also helps me to understand how I can customize this lecture, because I'll go in there and I'll say, well, I know we've got 7 people who are coming specifically for thyroid conditions. We've got 12 people who are coming who want to lose weight. And so I'm going to make sure that I'm going to cover both of those really well. And a lot of times I'll thread those together. So make sure that people are pre-educated before they come. Send them a video that shows the location. If you're doing it in your office, that's great. If you're not doing it at your office, show them where the location is, how to get to it. Just let them get to know you a little bit. So remember, you want to provide value 3 times before you ever ask for anything in return. But your phone conversation, following the primary script, following a bulletproof outline is going to be key for you. So when we show up at the event, I get super nervous. Like I always feel like I'm going to throw up. I know I've done it 8,000 times, but the adrenaline, when I find that I'm the most nervous, I also find that that's when I do the best. And I don't know why it works that way, but if you're not nervous when you get up there, you've got some serious mental issues, because you're getting in front of total strangers. And when you get in front of total strangers, it's kind of an interesting game. So make sure that when you are up there, you got your head in the right place. So you're completely present, you're completely focused. And then you also want to just, introduce yourself to people, have handouts. People love to read things. One thing that we've got now is we created a few whiteboard explainer videos. And so if you have not seen Cade's most recent one on the 5 pillars of health, I played that at the beginning of our last lecture, and it was very helpful. It's on our YouTube page, on the East West YouTube page. So, um, so get that, and you can play it. It goes through the whole concept of implementing more pieces of the puzzle. And those whiteboard explainer videos are so helpful. If you don't have any made, I would recommend, you can use Fiverr, and they're pretty inexpensive, but very educational. Okay, so you're getting up there. You've introduced yourself to a few people. If you guys don't get too nervous, you can go around and just chat with people a little bit. I typically just stay in the back and make sure that I got, I'm ready. If you have a little note card that you need, then bring a note card. People are not going to mind. But first thing you want to do when you get up there is engage the audience, because remember, you cannot develop rapport unless you develop some type of likability. So you have to be like them in some way, or they want to be more like you. But get up there and connect with them on a new level. So this is where you can say how many of you have autoimmunity. And for those of you who are listening, if you've had an autoimmune condition, then talk about it. I'll talk about my psoriasis, or the elevated TPO that I've had. I'll talk about just my battle with specific issues. I keep it brief, but you want to connect with them throughout the story. So you get up in front of them. First thing you want to do is you want to find out why they're there. Second thing you want to do. So hopefully you guys are writing these down. First thing, figure out why. What did you come for tonight? How many of you want to get that six-pack back? How many of you are here for autoimmunity? Second thing is, all right, I want to make two promises at least tonight. You have a question? Nope. Okay, so all right, did you say that you printed? The reason they're coming, their name tags or just their names? Oh, excuse me. No, you're going to have a whole list, Shayla. I'm going to answer your question, Shayla. So you're going to print their names on their name tags, because when you're talking to them on the phone, you're going to be getting all the conditions they're coming for. And then you say, now, how do I spell your name? Because we're going to print a name tag up for you. That will improve your show rate, because the big thing is getting them actually to show up. But not on their name tag. You wouldn't put that would be a pretty a HIPAA violation, but just have it there in your notes. All right, so you get up there. Step number one: why are you here? Step number two: I want to make two promises to you. The first promise is I'm going to give you better information about autoimmunity, gut bugs, and belly fat than anyone has before me. So by the end of this, you're going to say, why has my doctor never talked to me about this before? All right, and then you get an agreement. Is everybody okay with that? So I want to make sure I keep my promise. And then the second promise I'm going to make to you is you're going to have an opportunity to come into our office for a very special discounted rate to get a consultation. Is that okay with everybody? If I offer you a consultation. So what are you getting permission for right out of the gates? You're getting permission to sell them something. People love to be sold things. They absolutely do. They don't like pressure. But if you can learn the art of selling, then you let people know up front, you get their permission. So then it lowers their amygdala. So their body's not in fight or flight wondering, okay, what's he trying to sell me? And they already know up front, like all he's going to try and sell me is, and I always say, if this feels like the right fit for you, then I'm going to give you a discounted consultation. So you can't beat that. It's a gift from me to you, for you putting in your time, because time is the one resource that we can never get back. All right, so let's jump into the lecture. So once you get the agreement, then I always kind of backpedal and say, oh yeah, and there's one more promise. I try to pull the Steve Jobs on them. I don't know if you guys have watched Steve Jobs present, but he is arguably the world's best presenter. Look at Apple is like the third largest corporation in America. It's kicking ass, and largely in part to Steve Jobs' ability to sell. And so watch how he does it. Then you always give him a little surprises. Oh, and I've got one more promise to make to you. and that's you're gonna get a great dinner tonight. So yeah, then there, it helps people feel kind of excited. All right, so let's jump in. We're talking about autoimmunity. So a lot of you have autoimmunity today, and then you want to touch on it. If you've got one autoimmune disease, I don't know if you're aware of this, but your chances of having additional autoimmune disease triple. Okay, so that statement alone, now I am the expert, because you have to establish yourself as an expert. That's step number 3. The introduction, sorry, I missed the introduction. You're going to have somebody introduce you. A lot of times I get really frustrated if it's a crappy introduction. It's almost harder to generate momentum. So sometimes if I'm like, whoever's with me at the event, the marketing director, whoever, if I can feel that their energy is very super scattered, and I know they're just going to get up there and kind of like butcher the intro, then I'll just do it myself, because there's an old saying that a good introduction can make up for a poor speaker. And so you always want to have all your ducks in a row. But I know with Cade, when his front desk, when Kim, one of his wellness coordinators, started introducing him, their close rates went up, and she memorized it, and she got very passionate about it. So write up an intro. I always have them hold it in their hand. So, if they're up there in front of people, they can read, they can look at their script and then look up at the audience. The audience doesn't mind, but so that person is going to give you like a 3-sentence introduction. Do not bore them to death. This is not about you. It is about them. They just want to hear a little bit about you and make a connection with you. So keep it basic. All right, so autoimmunity. So we're jumping in. The very first thing you do is you give them a statistic. Science is the new religion. It's 2016, folks. So you got to give them some data. If you have one autoimmune disease, your chance of having another one triple. Autoimmune diseases can affect our nerves and cause peripheral neuropathy. Anyone in here have peripheral neuropathy? What's that feel like? So you're connecting with the audience, isn't it? This is one of the worst conditions I've seen, because it's hard to walk. Your feet feel like it's on pins and needles, and so you start getting engagement. They're like, wow, this guy's got some compassion. How about thyroid? Hashimoto's and Graves'. Did you know with autoimmune disease, the number one tissue that gets attacked is your thyroid gland? Now, why do you think your thyroid gland gets attacked? So ask lots of questions to the audience. What does that do? It keeps them engaged. So why does the thyroid tissue? I'm going to cover this because I just want you to remember this 3 things. There's 3 molecules that cause our thyroid glands to struggle. Actually, there's 4, but one of those is fluoride, one of them's chlorine, one of those is bromine. So we're going to come back to this. I'm going to cover why those things can do it. The other one's actually estrogen from contraceptives. These are 4 molecules in the environment that can really plug up our thyroid and lead us down the road of autoimmunity. So we'll talk more about that as we go on. So you give them just the basics of autoimmunity. I'll have another testimonial. What I didn't show you is the testimonials that I did before. I'll usually have a whole reel of testimonials right here, and then we'll play. It's about 10 minutes of testimonials. So as they're getting warmed up, you always want to have the seminar start date or start time 15 minutes before you actually get on stage and speak, because it takes a while, but that's where you have your whiteboard explainer videos. You have things for people to read, things for people to do. Because think about how you'd feel as if you were coming to one of these events and you just kind of, you feel weird. If you're like me and get a little social anxiety, then I try and put myself in their shoes. Okay, so how many of you would say we've got a health crisis in our country? They're all going to raise their hand. Part of it is food. And why food? How many of you have heard of Monsanto? And then you guys know how to talk about Monsanto. This is where you're engaging the emotion. Now, when people decide to anything, when they decide to make a purchase, when they decide to connect with you, they're not going to do it on logic. Logic is, kind of the first step. Like, wow, this guy knows what he's talking about. He kind of enlightened me on autoimmunity. But wow, now I'm emotional because is the food that our grandparents ate, is it the same as the food we're eating today? Absolutely not. How about the food pyramid? Did that work for us? And then show them this slide on the food pyramid, and it's like, what will happen if you follow this food pyramid? What happened to us over the last 60 years? We've been the byproduct of a scientific experiment. Think about it. We're fatter now than we've ever have been. We've got more autoimmune disease than we ever have, more inflammation, more heart disease. And you know what? Americans, we actually followed the food pyramid pretty darn well. If you tell us what to do, we're actually very good at doing it. But a lot of the information we got is misinformation. So who do you think was funding this? And then the big agricultural companies. If you say, yeah, there's what I found is there's three industries, and you want to hit on all three of these. There's three industries that have they're part of the cause of this health crisis in our country. One is, of course, the food industry. The second one is the health insurance industry. I mean, who's really profited by Obamacare? How many of you have better insurance now that Obamacare is out? No one will raise your hand. And what happens is people just start, oh yeah, they'll get pissed off, and that's what you want. You have to draw a line in the sand, and you want people to be on your side. This is how we connect from a tribal perspective. It's also how you can engage a person's emotion. So I always show Mark Bertinelli. I'm like, this guy, he's the CEO of Aetna. And how many of you have heard of Aetna? Yep, we all have. Okay. I don't know how this guy can only survive on $90,000 per day. I mean, we've got to support these guys, and then everyone just kind of laughs. But you see the irony of it. Like, who the hell needs $90,000 per day? Like, his salary is $30 million. Like, it's insane. And yet people are struggling. We have crappy health insurance. It doesn't cover what's needed. All health insurance covers is acute care. And that's the way that Western medicine's set up. It's beautiful for acute care. And then, you shed some light on it. It's the system. And these guys, these men in suits are the ones running medicine. It's not your doctor anymore. How about drugs? How about the pharmaceutical industry? What do we do if somebody has an autoimmune disease? We suppress their immune system. Where has that gotten us? Well, it's gotten us more autoimmunity. We're sicker than we've ever been, and we have this nice condition called leaky gut. How many of you have heard of leaky gut? Okay, I'm going to talk about this more a little later with the leaky gut, but I want you to remember that because a lot of these drugs, they cause more autoimmunity downstream, and they are killing people. So, all right. So and then this is a slide. So how many of you have heard of the book Death by Medicine? And I hope everyone listening to this webinar, if you've not read this book, you got to go get it, because that's where you can really see that we're in a full-on battle. We can no longer just take the sidelines and think, if I just treat a few people a week, I'm doing my part. But you're not. We need more entrepreneurs, more people who realize that we have a massive problem to tackle. And one of the big problems that we have is the amount of deaths that there are, iatrogenic deaths, in our country. The book Death by Medicine, Gary Null, the primary doctor that he references in there and interviews is a doctor named Robert Graham. And Robert Graham is the former director of the FDA. Now, Robert Graham, he said the FDA pads a lot of these numbers. We've all seen that JAMA number where it says there's 250,000 iatrogenic deaths. This one's even worse. It shows there's actually 783,000. And in the book Death by Medicine, it breaks them up. It shows you where all of the categories where these deaths come from. These are preventable deaths. These are people who you and I could be saving every day if they heard our message. So I want you all to put this, sear it into your permanent memory and say, wow, people are actually dying from over medication. They're dying from unnecessary surgeries. They're dying because they're not getting the right care. People aren't digging in. Doctors, unfortunately, the way the system's set up is they wait until it's too late. And this is where you want to use this analogy. How many of you have been told your labs look great? Anyone out there? Good news, Mr. Smith. We ran all your blood work and everything looks perfect. But you're like, well, why do I still feel like shit? And how come my hair's falling out? Why do I have no libido? How come I'm cold all the time? And that's because nobody's willing to dig in. Half the time when my patients bring me labs, so okay, I'm planting a seed now. So remember, you're planting seeds for the future. When patients bring their labs into me, so then they get a visual of what a consultation looks like. This is just some subtle psychology that I do here. When patients bring their labs to me, I oftentimes will find The doctor's notes will say everything looks good, and then I go back through the labs and I am shocked, even from a conventional lab standards, which I think are way too broad. Even from those standards, I still see highs and lows in certain systems. I'll see a person with high ALT and AST, and I say, man, your liver is struggling. You could have fatty liver. Your liver is not processing things. Or your bilirubin's high. I saw a lady yesterday, and her TSH was like 6. And her doctor's like, everything looks good. And I'm like, no, that's way too high. Your thyroid's underperforming. So you give some examples. All right, so get them fired up. Now let me show you how we get deceived as Americans. How many of you have heard the word relative? If you're ever reading a scientific journal, I know a lot of you do, and you see the word relative, then what you want to do is you want to say relative to what? And this is very interesting because, you look at Lipitor. Lipitor reduces the risk of heart attack by 36%. And you're going, wow, that sounds awesome if it really did, because what's the number one killer in our country? It's heart attacks, right? Or heart disease. And so 36%, what does that mean? If you look at the asterisk, now this is for the lawyers in the room, that means in a large clinical study, 3% of patients taking a sugar pill or placebo had a heart attack compared to 2% taking Lipitor. Now, this study actually was about 1,800 people in both groups. Is there a difference between 3% and 2%? And this is where people are just like, what? No way. So the relative difference between 3% and 2%, if you put the decimals in place, is going to be 36%. So this is how we get misled. Now, what's the better question to ask if you have high cholesterol? The better question to ask is why? Why is it high in the first place? Because can we lower cholesterol? Excuse me. Can we lower cholesterol? Yes. We've proven this time and time again. Actually, these drugs work very well at lowering cholesterol. What's the problem with taking a drug to lower cholesterol? The cause is still not addressed. You still have the same problem even though your labs show normal. Because half the people who die from a heart attack have normal cholesterol, the other half may have high cholesterol. So we haven't actually found a correlation between having high cholesterol and having heart disease. So if you look at this in the study, this is New England Journal of Medicine, 2010, after 4 studies involving more than 33,000 people, medications did not reduce heart disease despite lower blood pressure, lower blood sugar, lower cholesterol, nor a combination of these factors. In fact, the study revealed many devastating side effects, including an increased risk of cardiac event. Now, if you ask me, that is enough to say, wow, what is going on? What's the cause? Because yes, we can lower blood pressure, lower blood sugar, lower cholesterol, but heart disease is still going up in our country. And the number one complaint, what would you say? How many of you are on statins out there? And you get the, and that's raise their hand. What's the number one complaint that you have with being on statins? And you know what I hear? The number one complaint when people are on statins is brain fog, brain fatigue. So it's kind of interesting when you look at that. But get them engaged. All right, so if we look at the side effects, I mean, some of the side effects, the drug commercials are comical. So I'll usually act it out. I'll like, are you feeling gloomy? Is life, and then I'll do like a commercial for Abilify, and people now are being marketed to directly. The pharmaceutical companies, they don't even mess with doctors anymore. Who are they marketing to? Yes, you, the consumer. Because you as the consumer, what they know how to engage you emotionally. They spend so much money. I mean, just to come up with the name Abilify, that's several $millions. And they're spending more money on marketing than they are on research. And these drugs, are they safe? Well, that's questionable. I mean, if you're killing over 100,000 people every year with properly prescribed medications, I would say that's not safe. Imagine if we did that with herbal medicine. We would be hung at the stake. I mean, it's like a full-on witch hunt. I don't know about you, but we treated tens of thousands of patients. We have throughout the years, and we've never killed anybody. So it's crazy. So does stress play a part in autoimmunity? How many of you have too much stress? Can that cause you to put on weight? How come? you get the audience engaged. Okay, we found there's 3 types of stress. Everyone is probably familiar with these. So clinically, physical stress. Now, what does physical stress? How many of you know where your thyroid gland is? And so they point to their thyroid gland. Okay, now where do you get whiplash? And then they point to the same area. Okay, so if you have 3 or more whiplashes, your thyroid function is going to decrease by 60%. A lot of times you get put on a medication. Now, the number one most prescribed medication right now, any guesses? Is Synthroid. Yes, it beat out Lipitor. Starting in about 2013, Lipitor for the past, from about 2000 to 2012 was the number one most prescribed drug. $1 billion profits year after year, still making $1 billion profits. But now in 2013, Synthroid it's the number one most prescribed drug. Now, interestingly enough, Synthroid is how we used to treat high cholesterol. There's 2 drugs we used in the past. We'd use Synthroid, and we'd also use a drug called nystatin or diflucan. Now, how many of you know what drug that is? That's a drug that's used to treat yeast. And so what they found is about 50% of the people who had high cholesterol responded to the thyroid medication. 50% responded to the antifungal medication. Why is that? Well, if you think about cholesterol, the LDL particles, they need a thyroid hormone. The thyroid hormone actually binds on the receptor sites of the cell and sucks in the LDL particles. And then the LDL particles, interestingly enough, that's what carries the nutrients through your blood-brain barrier. And then your brain can actually work. So that's why you feel so crappy when you're on cholesterol medications, because you got no LDL particles. They're so low, and then you have no nutrients being carried across the blood-brain barrier. So your brain starves. But this is what happens if your thyroid hormone, if you have whiplash, your thyroid starts underperforming, your cholesterol goes up, then you get put on statins, your cholesterol went up because your thyroid quit producing enough hormone, so those receptor sites aren't pulling in the LDL particles. So something to look at. How about chemicals? We have lots of chemicals. Okay, I told you I was going to come back to the fluoride, bromine, chloride, and estrogen, birth control. All right, so let me talk a little bit about this, because your thyroid controls metabolism. Now, a lot of you want to, you want to reverse autoimmunity. Thyroid is the first gland to get attacked. You also want to get that 6-pack sticking out again. So here's how it works. With fluoride, bromine, and chloride, these are all halogen molecules. There's one other halogen molecule. It's called iodine. How many of you have heard of iodine? Okay, iodine is the active molecule that is used to make thyroxine. So T4 is thyroxine. Your thyroid kicks out about 93% of the T4 that your body needs. That T4 gets converted mostly in your liver into T3, which is the active hormone. So that's 3 molecules of iodine. And that makes that hormone smaller so that it can fit into the receptor sites of the cells. So the competing chemicals are fluoride, chlorine, and bromide. And estrogen can also block the receptor sites for iodine on your thyroid gland. So where do we get fluoride from? And then you talk about fluoride. And you can even get into it if they seem to be really engaged. I'll say, how did fluoride end up in the water in the first place? Does anyone know the history on this? And hopefully you guys know the history. Pharmaceutical companies, I believe it was Merck. One of the main byproducts of any pharmaceutical agent is fluoride. If you look at Prozac is found in every large body of water in the United States. You can't get away from Prozac. It is the Prozac nation. So what is Prozac? Well, 94% of Prozac is fluoride. It's everywhere. So what happened is the pharmaceutical companies are selling the fluoride. It was a byproduct of making pharmaceutical drugs. And so they would sell the fluoride to farmers. Farmers would put it in their fields thinking, no big deal. I like making the extra money. What happened is the offspring, the pigs were eating the grass, and they were having birth defects and eventually infertility. And so they brought in scientists. The scientists said, wow, you have toxic levels of fluoride in the soil. So the farmers said, no way, you can't dump this in our soil anymore. So the pharmaceutical companies joined up with the American Dental Association, and started promoting the anti-cavities. No more cavities if we have fluoride in the water. And sure enough, it's in almost every single municipal water source. They're dumping this junk into our water supply. It's a byproduct of making pesticides and a byproduct of making fertilizers and pharmaceutical drugs. So chemicals, beer, alcohol. We don't recommend more than 12 beers a night in our wellness program. So a lot of our patients, you have to downregulate it some, and then everyone's kind of laughing. But this is where I start planting the seed for a whole wellness program. So suddenly they're like, they see that we've got some good data that can show, hey, here's some problems. And then how about emotional stress? So the first thing we're going to do for everybody tonight before you go to get rid of the emotional stress is called a frontal lobotomy. Now, who would like to go first? And usually that gets people, pretty amped up. It's pretty funny. All right, how about us? Could we be more proactive? Yes. I mean, don't let me catch you doing this. And then you explain, okay, let's talk about autoimmunity. You mind if I talk to you about how your immune system functions? So this is how you're training them. I promised you I was going to give you training and coaching, right? And so you're showing them every step of the way through these seminars that you make a promise. Like I made a promise, I'm going to come back and talk about these three molecules, fluoride, bromine, chlorine. Did I make that for you guys? Yes. Okay. Now I'm going to talk to you about autoimmunity. You mind if I give you some training on this? So then you explain it. You explain how the digestive system works. You chew food, the carbohydrates start getting in. Oh, did we skip the bromine? Shayla. Oh, yes, thank you. Usually I'll just briefly skim through these because I don't want to spend a ton of time. I just see how engaged they are. But here's what you say. Bromine. Where do we get bromine from? It's a preservative where? Pastas, breads. If you have a hot tub, they're using bromine. Chloride. Where do we get chloride from? Once again, water, bleach, agents. We get it on our clothes. It's on our bed sheets if we bleach our bed sheets. In hotels, it's everywhere. The gases are the most toxic. Estrogen, usually contraceptives, and then I'll usually joke with the audience. I'll say, just get off your contraceptive. Just have some more babies. It's not a big deal. So anyway, that covers those three. Fluoride is the biggest one that I found gets people riled up. But thanks for bringing that up. My pleasure, Shayla. Glad to hear the questions. Okay, digestion. Then you jump into gluten. How many of you are tired of hearing the gluten? I'm gluten free, and it gets super annoying, right? I thought that too until it was getting rid of gluten that got rid of my exercise-induced asthma. And then I guess, the crowd kind of goes quiet. And I'm like, yeah, it's a big deal for me. If I eat too much gluten, I can't breathe. And I love to exercise. I love to ride my mountain bike. I love to run. And so if I have too much gluten in my body, it creates an issue. And here's some of the studies that we found. Gluten sensitivity can contribute to anemia, psychological and mood issues. Your brain actually can become addicted to gluten. You have the same receptor sites that opiates bind on, like morphine. The gluten stimulates those same pathways. So you get this nice little rush, but then you get these gluten withdrawals, and people think, oh, it's so hard being off gluten. It's like, yeah, because you were addicted. So gut infections, lupus, fibromyalgia, all these things we've contributed to gluten sensitivities. And most Caucasians, which, in Utah, it's rare. I think we've had like 2 non-Caucasians total. We're pretty diverse in Utah. But I'll say, look, 80% of you Caucasians in this room are going to have some type of gluten sensitivity. So it's something to look into, because what we found with autoimmunity is food antigens. You can see that number 4 on the triggers there. Food antigens can be one of those things that stimulates this autoimmune reaction. Stress can trigger it. Hormones can trigger it. Heavy metals can contribute to it. Think about the mercury that we're exposed to, the lead, if you ate a lot of paint chips as a kid, which a lot of you probably did. Just joking, but you're on this thing, so probably we all did. Pesticides and poisons. And then I'll talk about my experience. So when I was a kid, I grew up in a town called Rexburg, Idaho, a big metropolis. And Danny, if you're still on, you know the place well, or Shayla, you know Rexburg. I actually lived in Blackfoot for a couple years too, but I was so young I don't really remember it. But anyway, I would move sprinkler pipe. And every Saturday, the planes would come and crop dust us. And so I'd get showered in Roundup and pesticides. And it was pretty incredible because when I was done moving pipe, guess what I would go do? I would go get on the four-wheeler and I'd go down. Our farm was right on the Teton River. It's still there. And I would spray the banks with Roundup for leafy splurge. There's this infectious parasitic plant that would overgrow and get into our pasture, and the cattle wouldn't eat it. It was poison for them. And so we would keep it subdued by using Roundup. And I developed an autoimmune disease in my skin called psoriasis. So I'd get eczema, I'd get some psoriasis, and it was very embarrassing. And then I would explain that story. So autoimmunity, the problem is, where did that start? And a lot of it is starting in your digestive tract, which we're going to talk about in a minute. So one of the big areas is leaky gut. Now, I mentioned leaky gut earlier. Here's what it is. Now, leaky gut, if you've got GI inflammation, that's gastrointestinal inflammation, you've got these tight gap junctions. Your cell, you're only a single cell layer thick on your intestinal wall. And so what happens is you get inflammation that pops up. Those cells start to get pulled apart, and then undigested food leaks out. Now, what's going to happen to your body if you have undigested food particles outside of your intestines in your body cavities? What's your body going to do to that? So make sure you ask them this question to get the audience really thinking about it. Well, I think your body's not going to like that. That's right. And 70% of your immune system exists right around your intestinal lining. And so your immune system will start attacking not only the area where the robbers broken into the house, to use a metaphor, but the cops are going to go and circulate through your entire body. They're going to be looking for more robbers, more break-ins, and essentially more antigens is the clinical term. So what causes this? Because if your immune system is seeking out something that it thinks is a threat, it's not going to stop until it finds something. And usually it ends up on your thyroid gland, then it goes to your pancreas, your liver, it can go to the kidneys. It starts looking in organs because that's the most vital area it wants to protect. With MS, where's it going to go? Myelin sheath on the nerves, that's right. So some of the causes, stress, that can cause it. If your cortisol levels are dysregulated, your adrenal glands are what control the white blood cells. And so if you have chronic levels of stress, your immune system is going to be constantly going. If your toxic load is too high, once again, that's going to cause more inflammation. Your body can't handle all those fat-soluble toxins. It won't know where to put them. And so they get tucked away in the intestinal lining because they are really hard to metabolize. Food particles. There's 5 major foods that we found: gluten, dairy, soy, corn, sugar. Those are some of the main contributing factors, even peanuts. Drugs. Any guesses what the worst drug is that can cause leaky gut? NSAIDs. Yep. What are NSAIDs? Your ibuprofen, your acetaminophen, your Aleve, your Advil, Tylenol, all those things. Pathogens. That can be the yeast. Yeast can overgrow and they have very sharp legs and they can perforate this single cell layer in your intestines. Even organ malfunction. If your liver's not working well, you're not going to be detoxifying. You can't even convert. If your liver is tired and overwhelmed, you can't convert estrogens. They can't be metabolized. So that estrogen needs to be broken down from a fat-soluble molecule into a water-soluble and excreted. But if it gets remetabolized and reintroduced into your bloodstream, that can cause a lot of issues in your digestive system and with autoimmunity. And then leaky gut, what we found is it affects the whole body. A lot of people get sinus issues and they get frequent colds, food sensitivities. They think, oh, it's just the allergies, but really it's typically yeast. You get yeast that overgrows, and yeast loves to harbor in your sinuses and in your lungs. It can cause fatigue. If you have leaky gut, it will affect your adrenals. Like I mentioned, they regulate the white blood cells. It'll affect constipation, diarrhea, all those things. Now, how many of you have heard of adrenal fatigue? And then I'll jump into adrenal fatigue. Here's how we measure it. So one thing we like to do with all of our patients when they come in is we believe in testing and not guessing. So what am I doing here? So I'm framing the conversation. Remember, as I'm going through this, I'm planting little seeds so that when you get them to agree subconsciously, because remember, the subconscious mind is so much more powerful than the conscious mind. So How many of you think it would be important to find out if you have adrenal fatigue? How many of you would like better energy? People raise their hand. How many of you feel like it'd be important to find out if you have this? Well, here's one of the tests we can do. We look at your overall cortisol load. This patient, our patient here, had low cortisol, 18. DHEA is low, and pregnenolone. Those three markers can be indicators that you may have adrenal fatigue. Your adrenals may not be working as well. And I know there's a lot more detail around adrenal fatigue than that if you're looking at HbA axis, but you got to keep it simple for your patients. Okay, so this is how we would test it. How do you test adrenal function? A lot of you have had your hormones checked, right? Many of you have. The problem is they're not testing the right hormones, and they're not doing it at different times of the day because your cortisol has this nice relationship with melatonin. Now, what do you know melatonin to do? Well, yeah, that's right. It helps you sleep. Cortisol is going to be higher in the morning in a healthy person, and then as the night comes on, the cortisol lowers and melatonin comes up. If you don't have healthy cortisol levels, your melatonin is going to be skewed. You won't be able to sleep at night. So this patient, guess what happened right around 10 o'clock? Her whole day, she feels like she's in a fog. Her legs are heavy. Finally, when she lays her head down on her pillow, that's when her brain starts working. And that's the worst time. So then it causes this adrenal fatigue. And she can't sleep. She gets up, she gets creative, and then she goes to bed at 2 in the morning, wakes up again at 6, tired, so tired. And then, all right, so that's the way you describe that. I put a couple labs on there. You can put as many as you'd like. Okay, I'm going to skip through the thyroid connection because you guys should know all these things, because I want to jump into the close while we're finishing this thing up. Everyone doing okay? Any questions? Okay, go through symptoms. Remember, people connect to symptoms better than they connect to. People ask, they connect to symptoms. How many of you like better energy? How many of you have hair loss and thinning, constipation, face, depression? All these things. Now, how many of you would like to wonder, why do you put on fat in certain areas? I always ask for somebody to stand up and show me. How many of you know what saddlebags are? Now, okay, a few of you do. Can someone come demonstrate? And then it just, it's a way of getting the audience engaged. Yes, I'm telling you my cheesy jokes because they do work. Okay, now, a lot of you don't realize this, but the bacteria in your gut can either make you fat or make you skinny. Here's a study, then this is the fecal matter transplant about taking fecal matter from the skinny mice, putting it in fat mice. Here's what happened. Bacteroides, these bacteroides are very important for making sure that you're digesting proteins and carbohydrates. Bacteroides actually are what produce the majority of your neurotransmitters too. The firmicute are involved in dietary fat processing, but they want to store more energy as fat. And so if you can get the firmicute down, you will get firm and cute. Cold hands and cold feet, hot flashes, moods, nervous and emotional, insomnia. When do you burn fat the most? When you're sleeping. So we got to get you sleeping better. This gets people riled up. Here's how we get success. So here's the approach that you need if you want anybody to help you. So remember, you have to be very clear. The only way you can truly get a person healthy is if you address every single system in their body. If you don't address all these systems, you are not going to get them healthy. So very first thing you have to do, we have to support the detoxification and enzyme pathways. We have to identify your food sensitivities. If you're eating foods that's causing more leaky gut, can we get you healthy? They'll say, no, of course not. We have to identify hormone imbalances. If your body's not communicating with healthy hormones, your body's not going to thrive. Infections, if you've got yeast, fungus, parasites, bacteria, can we get you healthy if you have a raging infection? No. How about gut dysbiosis? What does dysbiosis mean? That's just a fancy word for having too much firmicute, for example, and too little of bacteroides. Dietary changes, vitamin deficiencies, nutritional deficiencies, restoring leaky gut and barriers, and then we have to correct inflammation. Inflammation is what's causing the autoimmune epidemic in our country. So, all right. So, did I teach you guys? So, what was the promise I made? I made two promises at the beginning. What was the first promise I made? And then they'll say, "Oh, you give us great information." I said, "Okay, I made a promise that I would train you on how I'd give you better information and train you on autoimmunity, digestive health, and adrenal fatigue, whatever the topic is. did I keep my promise? Because I'll keep going. If you guys didn't learn anything, if I haven't trained you better than anyone before me has, I'm going to keep going. So, and then you get everyone to raise their hand. Okay, you, and if someone doesn't raise their hand, they have their name tag on. So, and yes, you're using their name as you go through this. Make sure you make eye contact with every single person and use their name. So I'll look at Bill. I'll say, Bill, do you want me to keep going? I didn't see you raise your hand. I'll put him on the damn spot. It's really good that you show that you can run controlled. This is where it's very important for you to keep things contained, because if you, the more control, this is just like kids. They need structure. They need to know that this person can be trusted, because you're going to be running control in their health, and they're going to want to make sure you can handle it. So this is where I go a little silverback gorilla, and I make sure, okay, did I keep my promise? Okay, second promise I made, I'd give you an opportunity to come into our clinic for a discounted evaluation. So I feel like it might be helpful for me to explain our program a little more before I give you this offer. Is everyone okay if I explain how our program works? And then if you feel like it's the right fit, I'll show you how you can come in for a consultation. Is everyone okay with that? And then everyone's like, absolutely, please, and that's what you want to hear. All right, so there's 5 major pillars of health that we found to be critical in addressing your health. And this is where you could also play the 5 pillars of health video. Digestive health, detox, nutrition, hormone. You can see all those 5 pillars here. How many of you are here for yourself? And most people raise their hand. How many are just here as a support person? Okay. Even as a support person, are you looking to optimize your health? And usually I'll say, nah, not necessarily, or yes, I am. Okay, so raise your hand, all of you who are looking for a new approach. Okay, so for those of you who said yes, we found that there's the 3 T's. This is what our whole program is based around: the correct tests, the correct treatments, and the correct teaching. If one of those are missing, you're not going to get the results you need. So what tests do we run? Well, that depends on what's going on with your body, but there's some 4 basic tests that we want to look at. We want to look at your gut. So we call it getting the scoop on your poop. So we want to see how your bacteroides to firm-acute ratios look. We want to see if there is any autoimmunity. That's one of the tests. Second thing we want to look at is hormones. We want to see how your adrenals are functioning and all your hormones. We want to look at neurotransmitters and brain health. And then we also want to make sure that we're looking at proper foods. So we actually do a hair test, and we test for 300 foods, 300 environmental agents, and then we also look at all your micronutrient balances. And then once we have those test results in, that's when we can administer the right treatments. That could be with herbs, it could be with supplements. And then the other treatment that we do that's very fascinating and very powerful and effective is we do acupuncture. Or for those of you who are chiropractors, that's where you use chiropractic if you believe in it. I'm joking. I know you do. Especially you, Dr. Jones, you're great. But we want to make sure that we get the right. And then teaching. Now, teaching, this is where we actually take you through and we coach you on how to keep your body healthy. So just in general, we order the right tests, we determine the cause, and then we correct the cause, not just focus on the symptom. And then we take you through a step-by-step training. It's an ABC program where we have patients as young as 4 years old, or like my patient Rhoda, who is 94, and they're all doing great on the program. One of my oldest patients came to me and said, I want you to help me deliver this baby before I die. She's 91. And I was like, what do you mean? And she had a watermelon, for a belly. She wanted to get rid of her belly fat. And so now we got her watermelon down to a grapefruit, which is pretty darn cool. She's 91. So we provide mentoring and accountability. Now, I think mentoring is the most important thing that we do, because how many of you have had a mentor? A lot of people raise their hand. How many of you tried to fix something yourself, like an appliance in your house or a roof? And what ended up happening? What was the end result? For a lot of us, it's more money, wasted time, more frustration. And that's what a lot of people are doing with their health, because their doctor is not getting to the underlying cause, not training them. Oh, no, I was actually giving you a compliment, Dr. Jones. I was saying, because I've seen you've adjusted me and you're awesome. So I was giving you a compliment on chiropractic. I'm sorry it came across as sarcasm. It was truly not sarcasm. You are amazing. Okay, so all right, so ask yourself these questions. This is where you get into the emotions, because remember, are people going to make a choice based on emotions or logic? Always emotions. So how would life be? How's your life been affected? Your relationships, ability to work, ability to enjoy life. on a scale of 1 to 10, how motivated am I really to take care of my problem? And then this is where, you want to just give them a minute to think. So get a mentor. This is a proverb that helped change everything for me. I want to get you involved. Involve me and I will understand. So important. So you've got two choices. One, you can plant a seed and get some new growth. Something new can come up in your life. Or you can keep doing the same thing that you're doing now and expect a different result. And what will be the outcome? They say, well, probably the same thing. Yeah, exactly. And that's the definition of insanity. So you've got two choices tonight. You can accept and embrace the medicine of the future, where we actually mentor you, we coach you, we give you the right treatments, the right teaching. And so what we recommend is you come in for a consultation and a wellness evaluation. We feel everybody needs an evaluation, just like Barack Obama is evaluating the SpaceX project before Elon Musk got a grant, a government approval. You need the same thing with one of our doctors so we can see what's going on. When we do this consultation, this could be one of the most valuable and meaningful experiences of your life, because our doctors actually sit down with you and we spend up to an hour of our time. And so this is most of you, how much time do you get with your doctor? And people are like 10 minutes, 15 minutes. People are, the average with Obamacare is 7 minutes. And so what we do is we actually carve out enough time so we can find out if we can help you. If we feel like we can, we'll go through an entire plan of action. Now, this is where we'll review your labs. So bring in any labs you've had ran in the last 6 months, and we'll go through a line item step by step and find out what could be causing it. And then we'll figure out what additional tests need to be ran so that we can really help you. Now, the total value of this, in my opinion, this is invaluable. But the total value is $287. And like I said, tonight, because you've come here, I don't want finances to be a barrier at all. I want to extend a gift to you. And so your investment is just $87. And here's what a lot of people do. We like you to bring somebody else. Not only is it easier for us, because when you're working with another person, it makes our life simpler. But the other thing is you guys hold each other accountable. So we've lowered that cost from $287 to $47 if you've got a spouse. I see a lot of you are here as couples tonight. And I know some of most people at our events, we hear, well, can I sign up my sister? Or I wish my friend would have heard this, or that would have been perfect for my coworker. So you know what? You can actually extend a gift to them and they can come in for this appointment. It's just $47. You'll have to pay this tonight. This is just good for tonight, for those of you who would like to take advantage of this. But yes, bring in your kids, your spouse, whoever you'd like to, and let's get them signed up for this evaluation. So couple rules. I know a lot of you want to do this, but couple rules I have. Can I help everybody? No, I help people who are motivated. I take A students and B students. I don't take C students. A student, those are people who are really going to get engaged. They're going to be the ones who do their assignments. The B students are the ones who are going to be on the fence, not on the fence necessarily, but they may fall off the wagon here and there and need a little extra mentoring and coaching and accountability. That's fine. I'm a B student. C student is someone who is a procrastinator. They have to think about it. So we don't like it when people say, I just got to think about it. It's like, no, we're here to help you. And as long as you make the one decision tonight that you're going to do something meaningful for your health every single day, then this is your first step in getting to the underlying cause. And this will be one of the most important investments you make in your health. So the other rule I have, show up on time, bring a support person, bring your labs. And we've got paperwork here for you tonight. You've got to fill it all out. Men, you're horrible at filling out paperwork, so get somebody to review that for you before you bring it in. I'm the same way, so I hope I didn't offend anybody, but men, you need some help in getting the right content on the paper, because I actually read your labs and I read your paperwork before I meet with you. So I want to get a feel for what's going on. So what's going to happen is we've got Cade here tonight, and Cade's going to make appointments for each one of you who would like to come in. We have appointment spots booked out for the next 2 weeks for you. We keep space in our schedule. So try to get an appointment within the next 2 weeks. If you don't know your schedule exactly, we'll just, we'll collect the payment tonight, and then we'll do the payment. We'll collect your payment first, and then we'll come back around and do your schedule. So that should give you a little bit of time to figure out what day would work best for you. And if you don't know your schedule, then we'll have to call you in the morning, or we'll try and figure out a spot, and we'll at least hold an appointment for you that you think might work. Okay, so thank you very much. And then here's a paper, and then whoever's out in the audience, you want to pass out the paper so they can fill out their info, and you're done. So that's how you do the close. And realize people love to be sold, and if you do it right, it's very non-invasive. I don't feel bad at all when I do it. I actually feel really excited. And this is where you really want to put in, your enthusiasm, but also just show like, hey, man, I'm giving you a gift here. And it works out very well. So hope this has been helpful. We've got some guests on the line. And so what Kate and I would like to do for those of you is, I'm here. I can answer questions for you. Some of you, we'd love to get you on the phone. I know we've got some of our clients here who have been just crushing it. But for those of you out in the audience today who would like to learn more about how we can help you implement functional medicine and become just an incredible healthcare entrepreneur, we've got a program that's the Healthcare Entrepreneur and Functional Medicine program that will knock your socks off. So, please, send us a message right now. We're happy to talk with you or set up a visit for later. But I just want to thank everybody for being on this. Check out our website. It's gowellness.com. We've got our new acupuncture blueprint program, and you just go to acupunctureblueprint.com, and that's coming up in August. The other cool thing is we're going to be on every Tuesday morning doing these webinars. So tell your friends, your coworkers, tell everyone about it. And it's been great having you. Thanks for all your comments, everybody. Michael Jones, I love you, and I'll give you a big hug next time. You're totally kidding. Cool. Okay, and Shayla asked the question, can I bring recent labs that I have taken? What do you say when people say, can I bring? Yes, you always want to tell them bring labs. We don't make any money on labs. So yeah, tell them, please bring your labs. And Shayla, you are so gracious, and I'm honored to do this. I'm so happy you were on. Okay, any other questions before we end this thing? And this will be recorded, so look under the blog at Go Wellness, and you can find a lot of these there. Tons of good content out there for you folks. All right, love you all. Take care.